Welcome to the Nopalera Podcast, a place where I share the journey of building my company from the ground up, as well as the stories of others in our community. I am your host, Sandra Velasquez, founder of Nopalera, a culture-forward brand that celebrates and elevates culture. Aside from making great products, we are cultural storytellers with a mission to inspire our community to stand in their worth. In this podcast, you will hear a mix of solo and guest episodes around the entrepreneurial realities of building a company. I launched Nopalera from my Brooklyn apartment with no outside funding while working 3 jobs, raising my child in the middle of the pandemic at the age of 44. Thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope it inspires you to live boldly. As we begin to wrap up 2023, I want to again say thank you for everyone that has listened, that has shared, that has left a review. I have had the chance to meet many of you in person through all of my travels and speaking gigs this year, and you have all mentioned how the podcast has been valuable. That is the point. The point is to help you. This is not a podcast to just talk about all of our wins and how easy it is. And so I'm glad to hear that it has been serving its purpose. One of my favorite parts about the podcast is the fire round questions at the end when I have guests on and get to ask them their best piece of advice that they have ever received. So in today's short episode, we have amassed a compilation of all of those best pieces of advice, and I hope you enjoy. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Well, the best piece of advice was somebody telling me, just receive it. And you can't even imagine how profound that was, because I realized that I had not been receiving. And when we just start receiving, and so somebody pays you a compliment and you say, thank you, I received that, right? And now I say, thank you, I received it. And I look up at like the universe and I say, hey, this or better.
Yeah.
This or better, right? So just receive it. That's huge.
I love that. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
I don't know, because I feel like I hear great advice every day that I'm like, oh shit. I think my favorite quote is applied knowledge is power. I actually had as my senior quote from my mom that knowledge is power. And then I heard later on that applied knowledge is power. And I think that that's the truth, because it doesn't matter if you learn it, but if you don't apply it, then you're not going to get anywhere.
Listen, it doesn't just work on its own.
Yes.
You have to put it to work. The best piece of advice you have ever received. And listen, if you want to tell me the worst piece of advice, I'm good with that too, because it's about like the impact. So like the best piece of advice you have ever received.
The best piece of advice I've received was from a stranger I met in a supermarket. He was about 89 years old. He was ancient. And he looked at me and he said, how are you? And I said, I'm here. And he said, good, just be and stay. It took me a while to process that, but I was like, oh my gosh.
What is the best piece of advice someone has ever given you?
Best piece of advice, I guess, to lean hard into my differences, to never feel small or less because I'm a woman or an immigrant or a Latina, but always feel more.
I love that. What is the best advice you have ever been given?
That's really hard. I would say, as cliche as it is, don't negate your gut. I think, especially for me, because I'm a solopreneur, sometimes I'll make a decision and then I'll like think about it and be like, wait, but is that the right decision? And try to get other people's opinions. My husband's probably sick of me being like, but what do you think about this? You know what I mean? But I think it's listen to your gut, because you know your brand the most and you know it the best. And that's the hardest part, where I feel like sometimes when you're in it by yourself, especially, sometimes you forget that because you hear all these outside voices being like, you should be doing this, but don't forget about this and also do this. So I think it's listening to your gut and also just like remembering to take a beat for yourself. Take a minute. If you have to, just take a second, step away, go to the bathroom, lock the door for a second, take a few deep breaths, do whatever you have to do, listen to a song. Like sometimes I'll just like blast my favorite song, run around the room really fast, and then be like, okay, I'm good. So like do whatever you need to do to just get that piece of yourself and feel like you're at your 100. Because if you don't feel that way, things just keep piling on and you just get more and more like stressed out, I think.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
If you want to achieve greatness, stop asking for permission.
That is a word.
That is one of my favorite quotes. I'm like, yeah.
What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
Probably from my mom, which is to take every meeting, to do every interview, even if you're not interested in the job that they're looking to hire for, because you never know what might come from that one interview. Yeah, and I've taken that with me from my days of interning to today.
If I can add something, I would encourage people, especially people around my age, if I could go back and tell my early 20s something, listen to older people that you admire a little bit more, people who you feel are really secure in their own worth. Listen to what they say, because I'm very influenced by Mexican music, and I'm a big fan of Eli Guerra. She was in Chicago last weekend doing her performance. She's 51 years of age and does amazing alternative rock music and acoustic. And she does these things, these monologues in between her music, and she's just like, ya llegué a los 51, and she's just like, ya no me importa. I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm so over it. And it's almost
so liberating.
It's liberating to hear that, because as a woman, I'm seeing a model, right? I'm seeing a model. She is single in her 50s. I'm not planning on being single in her 50s, but if I am, that is the attitude. That is the way that I want to carry myself. And I think it's always helped to have people who, even if in my current environment, I don't see that person, to seek that model in different environments. Yes. And be like, that's how I want to feel. It's important to know how you want to feel more than exactly what you want to do.
Yes.
So I found her monologues very helpful.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? It doesn't have to be related to finance, by the way.
Yeah. I would say definitely one of the things that I struggled with early in my career was communication and clear communication. A lot of the times, I think as subject matter experts, I think we can get so in the weeds and in the details of every aspect because we've been looking at a certain problem or a certain issue in so many directions. But I think what I was given some feedback on early in my career was, hey, you need to distill this to the most important thing that you need to deliver to whoever your audience is. And so if I'm talking to a founder, I can get into all the inventory costing, I can get into all the accounting stuff, but you can sort of see everybody glaze over as soon as you do that. Versus, okay, let me distill all the information that we've gone through and then deliver clear, concise communication, action to our teams. And I think we can leverage that for not only finances, but really how do you communicate with your team on the most important things? How do you communicate to your clients? How do you communicate to your retailers or everything like that? Because at the end of the day, we all have sort of limited space in our head. And so being a clear communicator and communicating the most precise way is probably the best skill that I've had. And I think, frankly, it's been probably one of the reasons we've been successful is because I feel like we do a good job now of providing really the top things, and everything else is a little bit noise.
I love that, Alex. I'm executive summary for the win.
Yeah.
Give me the bullet points. What are the top 3 things I need to know? Everything else is secondary. I might get to it. I probably won't. What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
I think the best piece of advice has just been, honestly, to dream bigger. There's someone that I've kind of been talking to that's a little bit more advanced in their career, and her things to me have always just been you're thinking small still. Think bigger, dream bigger, because truly anything is possible. And if this experience has taught me anything, it's just, I had always wanted to do a children's book, but I thought it would be for myself. I had the story in my head already, and I'm if I have kids one day, I'll make it for them. And no, I needed to dream bigger and see the possibilities that existed beyond what was right in front of me.
I love that. And I just have to interject before I ask you the next rapid fire question. That what you just said to me is so important. It's so important for people just to hear and to be reminded of, because I 100% agree. I had the opportunity to see Obama speak last year, and it was a fireside chat. And they asked him, how can we help close the wealth gap within the Latino community? Because, the Latinos are the fastest growing. They're creating more businesses than anyone. And the rule of capitalism is that money should go to where the growth is, but somehow the money is not going there. So where's the disconnect? What's the problem? And his answer was, y'all need to dream bigger. That was the answer. Is he actually said the Latino community the entrepreneurs, they need to set their sights higher.
Yeah.
Because so many Latino businesses don't get past like 6 figures because we are so stuck in survival mode that we're like, okay, good. Everyone's eating. The rent is paid. We're good.
Yeah.
We don't need to dream bigger. We're so used to just surviving.
Yeah.
And what you just said, it's just, thank you for saying that. I mean, we couldn't have planned this, that you said that, but it's just so important for people in our community to just dream bigger. And like the fact that you did and it has become this new life of yours is just the proof that this is what happens when you do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I've thought about that a lot, where I think almost like a little bit of unlearning has to happen within our community, because we're taught to be like agradecidos, to have like enough, right? And then like,
thank you so much.
Yeah, we shouldn't want more. And I think it's beautiful to be grateful and obviously be content with just having enough. But if we want others to advance, you're right, we have to kind of break that ceiling that exists for us culturally. Yeah, we can all do better.
Yeah. And I mean, not to mention, like, you know, you illustrated this book and the writer is J-Lo, a Latina who has broken many barriers. I do also think that there is this point to be made that more of us need to succeed in different areas so that we see ourselves and we help others like us.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's ultimately how it happens, right?
Yeah.
So it's also that part of it.
It's not lost on me that one of the reasons that I was able to get this project is because the art director at the publishing house was a Latina, right? She understood that she's like, I want to make this project come to life in the right way. And there's not a lot of us in publishing, in kids lit, and in entertainment in general. So we need to be the ones that kind of like break those barriers, open that door a little bit wider so that more of us can exist in the beauty space and whatever it is. Because I think that makes all the difference.
Exactly. 100%. What is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
I think the best advice that I have received is about sending back down the elevator. It's just learning. Everyone gatekeeps learning. It's part of the ways that they have kept us, people who are like us, who look like us, who were raised like us. It's how they keep us out through by gatekeeping education. And so a long time ago, someone said, you're only as valuable as what you give back, right? And you have to reach back. You can't just reach up. You have to reach back. And so that to me has always stuck with me. It's something that I learned very, very early. And I think that for me, it's been super important for 2 reasons. One, I think a lot of us, when you're Latinx or when you're a child of an immigrant, you watch your parents just like hustle. You watch them just like honestly struggle through life. And then you learn that that's the way you're supposed to do things. And it makes you hesitant to ask for help. I was that way. I was like, also, I have 5 Virgo placements, so that's a whole other reason. But I watched my mom thug it out, and I was like, she did it. 2 kids, single mom, no family, didn't know the language. Who am I to ask for help? So it creates that idea in your mind that you gotta just hustle through it. But really, when you open up and you ask for help, it changes your world. And now that I'm in a position to offer help, I do that because I know that everybody who needs help isn't necessarily asking for it. So for me, that was just such good advice because it leads so much of what I do.
So send the elevator back down.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So tell me, number 1, what is the best advice you've ever received?
To follow my instinct. I think to listen to myself. But that inner part of myself, right? Not the mind, because I think the mind can be treacherous on us, but that inner voice where I think our souls reside.
It's definitely easier said than done, right?
I know.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
So you get to change your mind, just like your careers. And the most accomplished people I know have switched their careers 3 to 5 times. And so allow yourself to imagine where you can take yourself, where you can create a company. It's scary, but yeah, to know that you can change your mind is the most freeing thought ever.
I agree. I co-sign this statement. I also wish I would have learned that earlier in my life, actually, because for some reason, I don't know where we learned this thing that somehow if we decide something, we have to stay there. I don't know who taught me that. Is it society? Is it my family? I don't know where we learned that, but we somehow, a lot of us, I think, believe that, okay, well, if we get married, we have to stay married. If we have this job, we have to stay on this career path. Or if we live in the city, we have to stay here, whatever it is, right? If we're broke, we have to stay broke, whatever. So I love that, the power of changing your mind. What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, this sounds so cliche, but to be yourself. Just because even when I was recruiting for VC and it's like, oh my God, people are super smart, like everyone is super capable. And it's like, okay, but what about you is different, and what are you bringing to the table? And just lean into like my strengths. Like obviously we all have our weaknesses, but trying to figure out how do we get around that and how can we leverage that to really keep ourselves motivated and move forward. But yeah, I think just being yourself and staying true to your ethos.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, right?
Yes.
I'm always
100%.
telling people the most important thing you can do is get to know yourself. You need to know who you are. Thank you for being here with us. Remember to leave us a review on whatever platform you are listening from. Spread the word so we can impact and grow the community. If you are an entrepreneur looking for more real talk and resources, you can join my entrepreneurial newsletter from my personal website, sandralilavelasquez.com. But also visit nopalera.co to pick up your favorite self-care items for yourself and your loved ones. Join the Nopalera mailing list to be the first to hear about new products, exclusive promos. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at nopalera.co. Stay resilient.